So just catching up on a couple of student questions from recent webinars, and I think this webinar came from our interview with Dr. Linley Howard Payne. So just navigate on the channel, you'll find the playlist for the previous webinars, and go check out that webinar if you are interested in grounded theory. Any ideas how to include grounded theory into cancer research? I haven't done medical research myself. I know that it is absolutely possible because we asked that question in the interview. And I guess I would answer this question by just giving you a quick overview of grounded theory. It's really where you have a qualitative study and your source data is very unstructured. So typically interviews will have a whole lot of interview transcripts, and then grounded theory helps you work through those transcripts. You go line by line, excuse me, looking for incidents in the interview. So typically, if you're doing sort of more laboratory, quantitative, um, sort of lab work, where it's very much more experimental in terms of analyzing specimens and, doing much more quantitative analysis in the laboratory. I'm not certain the grounded theory would be the best option there. But if you were interacting with, humans to get data, and maybe after they'd been through a cancer treatment and you wanted to analyze, what the results were, for example, by all means, I found that, grounded theory, I use grounded theory in my own PhD, and my source data was unstructured data in the form of interview transcripts. I interviewed 25 people from organizations around the world that were using agile software engineering. So if your study is, very qualitative in nature and you plan to do a lot of interviews, then I would suggest the grounded theory does work very well for you. But you still have to have a well-defined research problem. You still have to have very well-defined research questions that you'll need to answer, and then grounded theory really, I guess, just takes you through the process of aggregating all that data and abstracting it up into a high level theory that ultimately makes a contribution into your field. So remember, grounded theory is inductive in nature. You're developing a new theory which itself is grounded in the data. So grounded theory is both the name of the methodology itself, and then it is what describes the result that you're going to get out of it. So you're going to get a grounded theory is also the results of your study. Can be a little bit confusing, but it is both the methodology and the output of it. So if you're aiming to do cancer research to develop a new theory, then and you want to use an unstructured data source like interviews, and it is primarily a qualitative data study, then I would suggest the grounded theory is absolutely fantastic. If it's a lot more quantitative laboratory type of work, then that's probably not going to work for you for grounded theory. Last thought on this one would be I would go and read Barney Glaser and Anselm Strauss' original paper called A Theory of Dying, which was basically where they started grounded theory, and they did research into patients that were basically had terminal illnesses, and they went around and they interviewed them in these hospitals. So grounded theory actually originated in medical research. So hopefully that's useful. A couple of thoughts on how to include grounded theory in cancer research.